Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Negative Alpha Bravo. And this is 7 November Golf. Roger, request you check your Romeo side. I'll go ahead and check my Tango side. 7 November Golf out. November 8-5, and 8-5, 7 November, say again. 7 November, go. I copied a while ago, 1 Charlie transmission that my can use and 8-5, this is 7 November, Charlie. 8-5 right now. Now 1 Charlie, 7 November, go.
This is 1 Charlie, reference to your last, you're Brandon 158, extra 5 stars, 1200 between teams and local. Also request your unit take extra method to see if we can try to get Whiskey 9 and 8 for pause at the playground.
And this is 7 November, Roger, stand by.
Got that.
Got it? Alright. And all units, this is 7 November Golf. My unit Alpha, Echo, X-ray Alpha Alpha in there.
One Charlie, Alpha Bravo.
Hey, I never took a dip.
Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Whiskey 9, Yankee, 7 November Golf, over. Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Whiskey 9, Yankee, 7 November Golf, over. Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Negative Alpha Bravo. And this is 7 November Golf. Roger, request you check your Romeo side. I'll go ahead and check my Tango side. 7 November Golf out. November 8-5, and 8-5, 7 November, say again. 7 November, go.
Hey, thanks for making it to a joint live stream with the Civ Div. Thank you, Clay, for making it. For those that don't know, we have a joint channel called Veterans Daily. And then, of course, I am Jason from Veterans Info Tap, and we are streaming this on all 3 channels if Clay got it right. So that would be good, which I'm sure it is. So thank you, Clay, for all your hard work and your technical expertise, if you will. So here's the deal, Clay. There are changes that are happening within the VA, within the rules, the regulations, and specifically their rating schedules for respiratory, auditory, and mental health conditions. I know you've talked about it. I've talked about it. Collectively, we talked about it, but it is something that we need to continue the conversation on so folks aren't left in the dark. And for those that already know all of this stuff, here's what I put out to you. Watch this because it helps YouTube understand to keep kicking it down the road to more people. Every day we get new subscribers coming on, new brothers and sisters that are coming into the fold that have never heard of this. So it's important that we all work together. Many hands make light work. Clay, I'm going to send it over to you. Give us just that brief high-level overview of what we can expect, and then we'll start diving into it.
Absolutely. And something I do want to hit on real quick. I had a random phone call. I just want to make sure it wasn't my wife or my kids. The reason we decided to do this live stream is because we do these videos a lot, specifically on mental health, tinnitus, and sleep apnea changes. And we get a ton of questions. And so if you have questions on the changes specifically, we will go, I'll sift through the chat and pull them up and we'll answer them. But to give a broad overview, Jason, changes are happening. I think April 2025 would be, I would argue veterans should use it as a planning factor specifically, not a end all be all. And food for thought. And I'm going to say something that's not going to happen, but it's going to get the point across. Could the changes happen tomorrow? That answer is yes. Is it going? No, it's not going to happen. So don't, misconstrue what I'm saying. But that's the mindset veterans need to have. And so if it happened tomorrow, do you have your intent to file in place to where the old rating schedule still takes effect, or are you dependent on the new schedule? That's what at the end of the day, that's what we want to avoid, right? We want to put veterans in the best possible spot. And so I think we should start it off with mental health, Jason. On top of that, this is one we actually disagree with. And so we're going to get two different perspectives. And so, we'll give a brief overview of mental health, and then we'll dive into some questions here. I'd have one more thing. I'm sorry.
Okay, and then I have one more thing too before you start.
Okay, so Jason, we have a partnership channel here, and so I can't tell who's who, but I can tell you this: what's good for Jason's good for CivDiv. What's good for CivDiv is good for Jason, right? And so, first off, Chuck Truitt, thank you for joining as a member. We definitely appreciate that. And AF Vet with 5, the CivDiv memberships. That I guess I know that one's for me. I definitely appreciate that. I don't really know what gifted 5 means, but I'm sure it's awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. But with that, Jason, go ahead and give us an overview of mental health.
Yeah, well, and before we do, I want to throw out there that if history repeats itself, right? Again, this is all in preparation. So we can make sure either we're doing the right chest moves ahead of time, putting the right protections in place before things go into effect, or prepping for something positive so we can be ready to jump on that when the time comes, right? So there's all these different things. But if history repeats itself, Clay, we recently had the schedule change for the digestive system. And that was 5 years in the coming. I mean, it took a while, but the VA did loosely notify, right? They put a little press release out that nobody reads, but Clay and I do. So, and then we push it out. So, but the bottom line is that they gave us a 60-day notice. They put us on notice and said, hey, look, that GERD rating and the digestive rating schedule, it's now not going to be rated as a hiatal hernia. It's going to be rated as esophageal stricture, which I believe really narrowed the audience that could benefit from that as a claimed condition. So the bottom line is that if history repeats itself, we should get a 60-day notice where we can be ready. Is there a guarantee that's going to happen? No. And to Clay's point, this could happen whatever, in December, February, April, like they're saying it is. They have it listed as April as the final deadline or the final actions for it, but it could happen after that as well. So the main point is that we are prepared. So with mental health, I'm just going to give the super 36,000 foot view here, and then I'm going to kick it to you to dive in a little bit, and then I'll come back in. So for those that don't know, currently the rating schedule for mental health is essentially a bunch of symptoms. And if you have a small portion of those symptoms or very little, you could potentially be rated at a 0. Nobody really ever is. There could be somebody out there, but usually that's not the case. Then it's the more of these symptoms that you have and the more complex your situation is, the closer to 100% you become. Now, the big tipping scale currently, and we're in October of 2024. Currently, the rating schedule calls for a total impairment of both social and economic aspects of your life in order to reach 100%. Well, total economic impact would essentially mean you can't really hold down a job, okay? So in order to reach 100%, the VA is essentially saying you're not working full-time. Are there people out there that have that? I'm sure there are, but if a rater is looking at your information and they ascertain that you're able to work and all of that, chances are you're probably not going to get 100%. So with that, the change that's happening is they are going to essentially take that big bucket of all these symptoms and split it into 5 different buckets called domains, 5 domains. And they're going to rate each one of those on a scale 0 through 4, 4 being the most impactful to your life. The big story short, and then I'm going to kick it to you, is if you are the most impaired in one of the 5 at a 4 level. It's completely, totally impacted by that specific in that specific domain. You would be rated at 100%. Well, let's say that you're not that impacted. Maybe you're a 3. If you're a 3 in 2 or more domains, level of impairment, you would then be rated at 100%. So let's kick it to you. You can dive into it a little bit, and then we'll start going back and forth.
Yeah. So the mental health, generally speaking, evaluating mental health is super subjective. Okay. Even at our level, which is nothing, by the way, we didn't go to med school. We're not a psychologist, psychiatrist. You can look at someone and say, tough it out, get over it, right? Because that's how we kind of measure that symptom that that person's going through, where in reality, from their perspective, it's really weighing heavy down on them. And then you kind of go up a level, you know, outside of Jason and I, which are not medical professionals. You have CMP Examiner 1, CMP Examiner 2. It's still subjective because of how they are trying to evaluate mental health. And I say that because that's, to me at least, that's the biggest change that we see on the mental health criteria. Right now, if you look at the DBQ and 38 CFR, it's pretty much like someone vomited symptoms of mental health and was like, 10, 30, 50, 70, 100. And in my opinion, the mental health rating schedule works good enough right now. Okay. I do think the new schedule is going to be better because it takes away some of the subjectivity, because you have the different buckets. I like how you describe the buckets, Jason. They are domains. You have these different buckets, and it takes away subjectivity, and it helps an examiner kind of focus. Okay, let's look at this bucket and these symptoms specific to that, and then they do that 5 times. And so that's kind of the, if I were to summarize the changes as a whole, it would be to decrease the subjectivity of mental health. The issue with that, and this is where Jason and I are gonna go back and forth because we do disagree on this one. The issue with that is that requires a CMP examiner to do a seriously complete, thorough lifestyle exam. Okay, it's no longer I'm looking at DBQ and I'm checking, panic attacks, depression, episodic episodes, whatever it is on the DBQ. Now I have to actually dig and ask the hard questions and get that lifestyle context to you individually, not compared to anyone else. And I just don't think CMP examiners, the contracted CMP examiners, are equipped for that level of evaluation, which in turn would have a negative effect on the veteran. And food for thought, that's just my thoughts, okay? I hope I'm wrong, but that's my initial thought whenever I see the changes.
So I'm going to jump in then. So here's my thought. And both of us and others out there who do stuff on YouTube, I would hope. I mean, I don't really watch them, but I would think that the majority of people, I can say you and I do, because I know us, talk about don't rely on the CNP examiner for anything. So why would you do it with this after the rating change? Take that out of the equation. You're going to treat that the same as you treat every single other claim that you file, and you're going to hear it from everybody. Don't rely on the CMP examiner. Rely on the evidence that you're providing. Have real conversations with your provider. Talk to your provider about the 5 domains. Talk to your provider about the level of impairment that you're facing within those 5 domains. Inside or outside the VA, it doesn't really matter. You need to be having real conversations and try to ascertain where you fall. Am I a 4? Am I a 3? Am I a 2? What does that look like? And if you're providing evidence that has that in there, and oh, by the way, if you had a really good external from the VA provider that's like, oh yeah, I mean, look, you build relationships with these people. Let's, at least it feels like it. So maybe, just maybe, they'll write you a letter that says, hey, look, I've been seeing you, Veteran X, for the past 5 years. And On these 5 domains, which I'll give you the 5 domains in a minute, in these 5 domains, I would figure that you are on a 0 through 4 impairment level, 4 being the most critical. You're a 3, a 3, a 1, a 1, a 1, and a 0. Okay, now you're getting all of this evidence, which is super solid, and you're supplying it. Well, now you still got to go to the C&P exam, which is going to screw up, like Clay's saying, right? That's not taken away from Clay's point, because it is an important one, and that's why you need to do so much work up front, but it's going to pay off dividends. I've said it in the past. I'll say it again. Treat it like it's $1 million deal, because it is. Do your homework and put it all together. Here's the thing. For those that saw the video I pushed, a couple videos that I pushed out earlier this week, the Supreme Court is hearing a case on if evidence is in equipoise, the VA is supposed to rule in your favor, right? So there is a big, huge spotlight shining on the VA right now regarding that rule, the benefit of the doubt rule. So even if your evidence came in at this level and the C&P examiners here, if they're considered equal or even really close to equal, the VA is supposed to rule in your favor. Now, do they get it right? No, they don't. They're always going to screw it up. But the board and the U.S. Court of Veterans Appeals, those two courts, two different ones in the appeal process, they're getting a lot of scrutiny right now by having the justices at the Supreme Court digging into their practices. So it might be good information for you to have as you cross that bridge. Back over to you, Clay.
Yeah. All great points. Okay. Absolutely. All great points. And there is a little tidbit in there too that adds to the subjectivity that I would absolutely consider. And in the proposed changes, it calls out medication specifically, which that is already code in CFR. So the VA is already supposed to be following those rules, meaning if you take medication and the medication works, you are rated on your symptoms post-medication. Hypertension is the best example because you can have, you can be deathly hypertension. You take medication, it's lowered down to 0%, which sucks for VA ratings, really good for your health. Do not stop taking your hypertension medication if that's what you got out of that. Just forget that, right? But that same thing applies for mental health. And I think because the proposed changes calls that out specifically, I'm very curious as to why it's already a 38 CFR code. Why would they double down on that in the proposed changes? That is a thought in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And it adds to the subjectivity of, again, you have two examiners looking at medication.
Yeah.
And it's just food for thought.
Yeah.
It's very nuanced. There definitely is not a single answer. But if you're ready, Jason, we can run through some of these questions and just...
let me do one thing here real quick,
ahead.
and then we'll jump into those. So on your point of the verbiage being kind of doubled down in the proposal, I would say that, we're not doing a line strike and just remove and replace one thing. We're not doing an edit to the rating schedule. They're rewriting the rating schedule.
Yeah.
So that might be why they're doing that. I mean, I don't really know, my guess. The other thing I want to do here real quick is just read off the 5 domains so people understand the categories in which the VA is looking at. Then we'll jump into questions. So the 5 domains, so everyone understands, is cognition is number 1. Interpersonal interactions and relationships is number 2. Task completion is number 3. Life activities and navigating environments is 4, and self-care is 5. So those are the 5 domains. And again, just as a food for thought, if you're a level 4, the most impactful in any one of those 5, you're 100%. If you are, and it's got to be deemed by the VA that you are, right? But you need to provide that evidence. If not, if you have 2 3s in any 2 of those domains, you again are 100%. Let's hit some of those questions up, Clay.
All right. So Francis, and this is in no order. I just kind of scanned for questions related to the changes. So if we're probably going to be answering things multiple times. All right. So when is the tinnitus, MH, and sleep apnea changes going to take effect? Because I just filed October 2nd. That answer we don't know. That's the answer. Okay. As a planning factor, and I almost said the wrong answer for a second. As a planning factor, and I think Jason and I agree on this one, April 2025 should be in your brain. That should be the date that it is final. It's probably not going to be that exact date, but it's used as a planning factor. Now, you have already filed. Jason, do you want to take that piece on?
Sure.
What does it mean if you already filed for anything related to
Right.
the changes?
Right. So two things could theoretically happen. The VA could move fairly quickly and decide your claim before the change even takes effect. Obviously, they'd be using the current rating schedules to determine your claim. After the rating schedule does take effect, if you feel as though, in your example, if I remember right, it was tinnitus and mental health. Tinnitus, you're going to want to leave alone because it's going to go away. The mental health, if you feel as though you could get a higher rating on the new schedule, you would actually have to file for an increase. So that is kind of one option that could happen. Another option would be is that the VA takes a long time with your claim and you cross over into the new rating schedule time frame. Now you got two rating schedules in play during your claim processing period. When that happens, the VA is supposed to, okay, they're supposed to, doesn't mean they're going to, they screw up all the time, okay? This is why it's so important, by the way, Clay, is if you don't know what they're supposed to do, you don't know if they did the right thing or not, and you might just take an incorrect outcome, right? So what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to weigh your evidence against both of the rating schedules and give you the more favorable one is what's supposed to happen. So if you don't feel that happens, then you'd want to file an HLR, higher level review after that fact to have that conversation to make sure that they got their ducks right. Now, that's really kind of the two biggest things. Do you want to add anything to that pops in your head?
Yeah, what Jason just said about the VA is supposed to take the old schedule and the new schedule, assuming you fall on both. That's not just us saying it. That is an M21 TAC 1 reference. Okay, it's a regulation that the VA follows. Food for thought. You think you're a brand new VSR on the street. You're rating VA claims. Does the VA teach VSRs the entire -1 and -5 and 30 CFR? The answer is no, they do not. And so I love how you brought up that if you didn't know that, then you just accept the VA's answer. That it could be good and it could also be bad. I do think for a lot of these questions, using GERD and IBS as like the staple, because that already happened, is a great example. And so, for instance, veterans who were rated for both the GERD and IBS prior to the changes, nothing happened. The changes happened, nothing happened. In order for them to get those separated, if they wanted to, most probably won't, they would have to submit an increase. And so that's a long way around the barn of saying if you already filed, you're probably going to be service connected prior to these changes, by the way, even if you filed all three of those. You're fine. Nothing needs to happen unless you want it to happen, and that would be an increase. Real quick, because I know I said something. I don't want someone to get a hair, on their neck or anything. The only.
What are you saying, Clay?
Not the only.
What are you saying? A hair on their neck?
Submitting the increase is not the end-all, be-all answer for everyone. It is specific to you, and you need to figure it out. Jason and I cannot tell you through YouTube how to answer that question. So, for instance, looking at GERD, if a veteran had both GERD and IBS and their GERD, they had the esophageal stricture symptoms, immediately I would say, yep, I'm submitting an increase to have those separated. If they didn't, the answer is probably no. Probably. Right now, if they had GERD rated at 10% and their IBS would have been rated at 20, sure, submit the increase and get IBS at 20. But there is no blanket answer. So the reason we're doing this live is because you have to figure you out. We'll help you along that process, but that's really the end all be all goal. Do you want to add anything to that or go on to the next?
No. So to the next question.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we have tons of questions. So, yeah, tons.
Okay.
If you are 100% on CPAP when the change comes, what will happen to that our 100%, will they take it? I just want everyone to know. I'm pulling up the question so you don't think that I'm the one who can't, you get what I'm saying. Yeah, nothing happens if you're already rated. Go ahead.
So let me read this then. So for that, right, here's a snippet from the law, one of them anyway. So it says, however, in no event shall such readjustment in the rating schedule cause In no event shall a readjustment in the rating schedule cause a veteran's disability rating in effect on the effective date of the readjustment be reduced unless an improvement in the veteran's disability is shown to have occurred. Now, here's the thing. It's so weird to have to read into this stuff. And this is why when you're looking at law, there's a lot of, okay, well, we think it means this. It's all about interpretation, right? And I'm going to tell you this. I think, Clay, you and I need to really reach out to maybe the House committee and the Senate committee about adding in a little extra line or so. The bottom line is that the rating schedule changes. That's not going to allow the VA to reduce you because now you're in a different mark on that rating schedule, right? They're not going to shift you because of that. Mm-hmm. Now, if you magically get better, that's different, okay? So if you show improvement, okay, that's different. I needed to CPAP. Now all of a sudden, hallelujah, I'm healed. I don't even have sleep apnea anymore. Different situation, right? Because you've actually improved. Versus the rating schedule changed and I'd be in a different spot on that rating schedule. That is not what they're talking about. They will not adjust you solely based on the schedule of rating changing. Clay.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up current symptoms. I think that flies over a lot of veterans' heads all the time. The VA determines your percentage on current symptoms, not what happened 10 years ago. It's what happened right now. And that goes for all claims, not just the changes either. Now we have another question, Jason, and it kind of leads into tinnitus. And we can go ahead and talk about that. I was told yesterday during a CMP that my tinnitus cannot cause migraines or headaches. It's 50-50, that it can only aggravate headaches or migraines. So this is not a question specific to the changes, but it does bring up a great point about the tinnitus changes. Yeah. Because, we keep saying tinnitus is going away, which is true. The diagnostic code for tinnitus is...
Everybody's ringing in the ears is going to disappear. Everybody's healed.
The diagnostic code from 38 CFR is flying away, okay? It will be deleted, erased, and you'll see tinnitus ringing in the ears as a symptom under hearing loss. It was vertigo, which in 38 CFR is peripheral vestibular disorders. That's really hard to say. TBI and like a ton of neurological conditions, right? And so that's where you'll see tinnitus as a symptom. And I want to hit on the secondaries, and I'll pass it to you. The VA rates symptoms. They always had, and they always will. The VA rates symptoms. In fact, if you have a chronic symptom, the VA that doesn't meet 38 CFR, the VA will find a place in 38 CFR that best suits that. Chronic pain is a great example. If your chronic pain best suits a lumbar strain rating for that diagnostic code, they'll just throw it in there. Okay. If it best suits for a mental health rating, they'll throw it in there. And so the VA rates symptoms. They do not rate the diagnosis, period. So having tinnitus is still it's still going to be a rateable condition. Now, there's tons of caveats to that. There's a secondary cause that I'm going to speak on, which means secondaries are still okay. Now, if you look at the causes of tinnitus, and I know people are going to disagree with me, but just so you know, it's not my opinion. It's the medical community's opinion. The VAs didn't create the tinnitus changes. They didn't create the mental health changes. They did create how they're rating sleep apnea. We'll talk about that, trust me, because that makes me mad. But the VA is essentially falling in line with the tinnitus medical community consensus and the DSM-5 criteria for mental health. The VA is just kind of copying and pasting. And so to give it to you straight, tinnitus does not cause anything, okay? Cause, no. Correlation, yes. Aggravation, yes. Cause, no. And that's why instead of tinnitus having its own DC, diagnostic code, it's now a symptom under all these other diagnostic codes. So your C&P examiner, how you worded it is incorrect. Causation, no, but correlation and aggravation, which are still basis of service connection, by the way, the answer is yes. So it's a yes / no / but / unless / except, however 38 CFRs thrown together. So, Jason, tinnitus.
So back to that. Yeah, right. Yeah, good sure. So back to that question, comment. Prepare for a higher level review or for a supplemental. Chances are you're going to be denied for your migraines as a secondary, because that's what it sounds like you did. So it looks like you filed for, I have migraines due to my tinnitus, right? Filed for that. You went through, you got your C&P exam. The C&P examiner said, yeah, no, you don't. And so that's what they're actually going to put in their report. Not likely to be service connected or secondary to. So now you have a question that you have to answer yourself. Did I supply enough evidence to bring this into equipoise? Do I have a neurologist, for example, who said, yes, your migraines are because of your tinnitus, and here's a letter from me, and here's my credentials, and I outweigh with my credentials that C&P examiner who is just some sort of general practitioner, okay? That would be a good place to be, and you could point that out in a higher level review. Chances are you didn't do that because most people don't, but we'll just say that you didn't. So now, maybe your evidence is close. Well, now you have the benefit of the doubt rule that should take effect. It's probably not, which means you're going to have to take it to the board, probably, where the board will, work with that a little bit better. Probably especially more so now because they don't want the light on them with the Supreme Court breathing down their neck on this. However, another option is, okay, let me throw the brakes on for a minute. I know what's probably going to happen. I'm probably going to get denied. So I'm going to go back to my doctor, whoever it is, and say, hey, can I see a neurologist about my migraines if they're not, right? Try to get to the more letters behind the name, the better when it comes to this. I get it. It's work. It's extra effort. It's like, oh, man, now I got to make another appointment. I got to get a referral, all of that stuff. Again, Clay, I say it all the time now. Treat it like it's $1 million deal because it is. And if you can get migraines connected as a secondary, I mean, that could be 30% or 50%, which is big and could move you into whatever, I don't know, maybe it pushes you to 100. I don't know. But it's a big deal. So you need to put the effort in and go that route, because chances are you're going to need to put in for a supplemental or push it to the board. So I just wanted to touch on kind of the underlying of all of that. For tinnitus, well, actually, before we jump into it, Clay,
real quick, we have a super chat. Let's answer the super chat, and then we'll jump back to tinnitus.
Okay, you got to slow me down.
He had donated. I feel obligated to answer his question fast. I'm rated 70% for major depression. All 5 buckets filled. So for just real quick, I want to make sure you understand this. The buckets don't exist yet, so that's just your self-assessment. I want to make that very clear. Your assessment may not be the same as the examiner's assessment. Okay, why be automatically upgraded to 100%? The answer is no. No, you.
And that's a great question.
Yeah, you must. And this is probably the most common question that's going to come out of this. I'm rated for mental health, tinnitus, sleep apnea, whatever else. Changes happen. Is the VA going to increase my disability or decrease my disability or take away service connection? The answer is no. No, they are not. Okay. You have to prompt the VA to get an increase. You're at 70%. if you do truly fill all 5 buckets and you have a single disability rated at 100%, I think every day you go for that, because that's the way to SMCs for real. Jason, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you need to do, and this is a great segue, because we're going to end up kind of leaving mental health unless there's questions and talk about these other things too. So, but this is a great one to wrap up mental health with. What do you need to do today for the mental health changes, right? Preparing for these changes. One, for this example, awesome. You know where you're at. Start having those conversations for real with your provider, and make sure that they're annotating that in your medical files, right? Make sure that they're writing that stuff down. Call them out in a nice way to put in those 5 domains, right? Hey, look, here's the way I kind of word things. I'm very much a you get more with honey than you do with vinegar type of a person when I'm trying to get things done. So if I had a external from the VA provider, my conversation would be, hey, so-and-so, whatever your connection is, I'm working with the VA on my mental health stuff, and I'm putting in a new claim so I can get reimbursed for my medical expenses for all of this stuff. And, it would be helpful if we can outline the 5 specific areas that they really want me to focus on. And if we could talk about the severity in each one on a 0 through 4 rating schedule, kind of a rating system, with 4 being the most impactful. Can you help me with that? Yeah, sure. Okay, great. Then you can start having those conversations. And then who knows, maybe they'll write you a letter that just says all of that information, and that here's the 5 areas of concern, and here's your impairment, right? On a 0 through 4 scale. Completely impaired at a 4, and doesn't bother you at all at a 0. Start doing that now. Get all of that, because sometimes, look, this stuff doesn't happen overnight, right? One visit isn't going to fix all of this stuff. You need to start building it, building, developing all of your evidence, and making sure you have it there. Again, a broken record, it's $1 million deal. Treat it like it is, because the more effort you put in, the less heartache you're going to have, because nobody likes getting denied or rated lower than what you should be. Nobody likes going through the appeal process. It's a lot of anxiety, and especially on the mental health side. I mean, look, there's already enough anxiety. One more screwdriver turning a screw on you is like, you just don't need it. So take your time, put it in an intent to file if you haven't already, and start developing your mental health claim appropriately. Do not rely on the C&P examiner to get it right for you, because I'm in agreement with Clay on that aspect. They're not going to help you, especially in this. There's no way. There's way too much to unravel in a 30-minute to an hour-long mental health session, right? With somebody that you've never met before. It's the weirdest thing. So you need to front load it with as much evidence as you can, and work on that today is how you prepare for tomorrow. Clay.
Yeah, I think that, honestly, I'm probably going to steal that from you, Jason, because that is the biggest takeaway from this, is front load evidence specifically for mental health, because it is just a 1-hour exam is not going to, at a one-time visit with someone you've never met before, it's not.
You're not going to show all your car. You're going to keep stuff in, and it's just not. Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, we have this not a question, it's a comment. So I'll tell you this: Greg is extremely smart. Just food for thought. But he says, so you do not want to close out a possible relationship with other conditions and limit consideration to just hearing loss and tinnitus claim. It's not a statement, but what it makes me think of, Jason, is when insomnia changed, and I think that's another staple we can use as an example, because that was a bad change. And in my opinion, it was a bad change, right? Where insomnia can't be secondary. It can't be secondary, meaning its own mental health rating. It can be its own rating if it's service connected via direct basis of service connection. And so now we see a lot of tinnitus secondary insomnia ratings, because people see a YouTube video about how tinnitus can get them 100% with insomnia, right? And so that'll come back at 10% now. So now you have tinnitus 10% with insomnia. And some people would say, don't even claim insomnia. It doesn't matter. I would say I think that's completely wrong, because you're really missing the point. And I think that's what Greg's getting at here. Just because insomnia is still going to be roped under tinnitus capped at 10%, insomnia is going to lead to other conditions. And so Jason and I say this all the time: be properly rated. I don't care if it's a 0%, a 10%, 150 million%. Okay. I don't care. Be properly rated. That in that instance, insomnia is most likely going to develop into irritability, severe anxiety, depression. If you're not sleeping, trust me, our superpower as humans is sleep. Like, that is our superpower. If you're not sleeping, you are on a downward decline to death. And that's just the most blunt way I can put it. And so when I see people say, oh, they changed insomnia, don't even claim it anymore, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. No, that's not the case at all. Still claim insomnia, because that condition can get worse, and that condition will develop, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not a year from now, but 5, 10, when I am Jason's age, my conditions are going to get worse. Right. But thank you, Greg. I know that wasn't a question, but that is something that really brings home this whole stream. Do you have anything to add to that, Jason?
No, that's awesome. I do want to just mention, we started to go down the road of tinnitus, right? Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to remind people from the VA's, I guess, press release or whatever you want to call it. It's like 2 sentences. So they say, this is from the VA to the public, right? For tinnitus, the proposed changes would recognize that symptom within the veteran's broader ailment and provide service-connected compensation for tinnitus through the disease to which it is attributed to. So what they're not saying is, we're going to give you more on these other conditions because you have tinnitus with them. It's just part of your symptoms. Okay. Mm-hmm. So another example, Clay gave them out earlier. I know there's other people watching that weren't watching before, but essentially there's not going to be a standalone, I have tinnitus, it's just ringing in my ears. I don't know, it's there, right? Okay, great, you got tinnitus, here's 10%. Right? And isn't it the most common claim as well, right? Yeah. So, I mean, they're going to rip that away. And what they're going to do is say, okay, well, you have tinnitus as a symptom from something else. What could that be? Could it be a TBI? Could it be Meniere's disease? Meniere's disease allows for a rating with or without tinnitus. So I believe that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I keep forgetting to go back and look, but I vaguely remember that they said, if you have a 0 compensable hearing loss and tinnitus, they will give you a 10%. I think that's how they're working that angle.
Yeah. So how I interpret the changes, I think that's the best way to start that. It appears that ringing in the ears is going to be a 10% rating for tinnitus. So instead of saying tinnitus 10%, it'll say hearing loss with tinnitus, probably. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so that's only at the lowest level. So it's not a 10% bump to any hearing loss. It's only if you have a 0% hearing loss. So you're rated for hearing loss. It's just not enough. And the hearing schedule sucks anyway. So for those that have ever applied or have it, it's really not that great of a rating schedule. But it is what it is. So if you have a 0%, then boom, they'll give you a 10% if you have tinnitus ringing in the ear. So that is still kind of the gateway in for a lot of folks. Any questions there for us, Clay?
Oh, dude, we got tons. Okay, that's not even an issue.
Okay.
We're going to have to not answer some, actually. So when they make the changes, if you've been 100%, and I'm just going to rope all of the P&T questions into this one right here. Will you keep your 100%, or will they make changes to your percentage? If you are, and I want everyone to just jump on this train with Jason and I. If you are 100% P&T, they can change wherever they want to tomorrow, next year, 5 years from now. It doesn't matter. You're still going to be 100% P&T. Okay. You're safe. you are safe. So you might see thumbnails. I have a thumbnail that says, am I safe? Okay. You're going to see that happen from now all the way to April 2025, or unless it gets extended. I'm telling you right now, P&Ters, you're safe. Breathe, relax. Now, don't go submitting increases after the changes take effect. Okay. That's a whole different story. But as of right now, you're safe. Do you want to add? You want to add to the because that is the you know,
right,
am I
right.
safe? I'm just stirring this pot
right.
over here.
So everybody uses the word grandfathered, right? So yes, you are essentially, for lack of a better way of putting it, grandfathered. It doesn't say anywhere grandfathered, but the intent behind the different pieces of law through the M21 or through the CFR or the United States Code of whatever, you know, all these different things all imply anytime there's a rating schedule change, the veterans ratings should not be effective solely because of the change. Now, it does say basically that if you magically improved, that's already the case, right? There doesn't need to be a rating schedule change for the VA to go, wow, you magically healed. Right? It just gets harder and harder for them to reduce you as you progress through your tenure as a rated veteran, right? So the 5-year mark, or you become 55 years old, you got static conditions, those types of things. It becomes more difficult for the VA to reduce you, even if you do start to get a little bit better. But chances are, like most of us, it's not going to get better. You're likely to get worse. But let's talk about, Clay, what people should do today if they have tinnitus. Right? Mm-hmm. You have tinnitus, you never filed for it. You're like, I'm veteran Snuffy, and I'm out looking for all of my high value claims, and that's all I care about. Give me 30, 40, 50, 60% ratings. That's what I want. Okay, cool. But if you have tinnitus today, what should they do?
Yeah, so first off, Freddie, thank you very much. I appreciate that. We appreciate that. Now, when it comes to tinnitus, everyone keeps saying, you know, we just had one earlier. I got denied migraine secondary to tinnitus because of blah, 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 causation, whatever. That's true because the medical community, the consensus on tinnitus is the opposite. That's why we see tinnitus being thrown in these other conditions. Exactly how Jason just read it off of the VA's press release is exactly how they're going to rate tinnitus. Translated into secondaries, those are going to be easier now. That's basically what that means. So if I have tinnitus and I have migraines or vertigo or Meniere's, right? Or I have a TBI or a neurological condition, whatever the tinnitus is roped under, what they're saying is right now you see people saying migraine secondary to tinnitus. It's actually the opposite, where it's tinnitus secondary to migraines, tinnitus secondary to TBI, meaning it gives veterans, generally speaking, an easier avenue to be rated for specifically migraines, vertigo, hearing loss, TBI, and neurological conditions. I'm saying neurological conditions because there's like 500 of them. I don't memorize them all, but it really leads an easier route to those connections. And so I want to say that to answer your question, Jason. What do? You go get current diagnosis of all those conditions, assuming you have them. Okay, you have to have the symptoms. It's got to be a chronic clinical diagnosis, and when the changes take effect, that's in your back pocket. And so if you want to pursue those, the evidence is now established to where you'll be able to pursue those.
So now let's unless there's another question you want to jump to right now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about sleep apnea because it's super frustrating to me. And we got kind of 3 categories, right, of folks. Well, there's probably more than that, 4. Okay. We have folks that are direct service connectable, right? But they haven't filed yet. Okay. Then you have folks that maybe they have sleep apnea. They don't even know it maybe. And it's secondary to something else. Then you have folks that are just getting out of the military within the next, 6 months, right? Then you have those that, hey, I'm going to be exiting like in a year and a half, you know, here I am, right? So let's talk about the changes that are coming down the pipe from the VA on this horrific change, in my opinion, and what folks can do to prep for this, or if it's just kind of like, this is what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to bring up this because I found it funny, and it's in line with what we're about to talk about.
Perfect.
Because I have obstructive sleep apnea service connected, but I can't apply until I leave the Army 16 years from now. Brother, one, you have no idea if you're doing 4 or 20, but I can just tell you're super motivated. So good luck to you. Also, not service connected because it's just not. There's no other way to say that. But that brings up the, I'm still in the military. What happens after the changes? And that's what we're about to discuss. So definitely stay tuned for that one. I just really found that comment to be hilarious.
That's awesome. Now let me throw this out there for those that are listening or those that know people. If you are in the reserves or the National Guard, you can file a claim now,
Yes.
anytime. Doesn't matter if you have 6 years left, 1 year left. It doesn't matter. Reserves and National Guard, you can file anytime. Okay, back to you.
Absolutely. To talk about sleep apnea, I think there are 2 urgencies, meaning it needs to happen right now, today, tomorrow, next week, no later than next week on what veterans need to do. For all of them, just submit the intent to file. Worst case scenario is you don't use it, it expires, big whoop. Okay, that's number 1. Super easy, takes like 5 minutes. The second thing to do is if you are able to file for sleep apnea, and I mean file, not just do the intent to file. I'm talking like submit the sleep apnea claim. You need to do it right now. Whether it's direct, secondary, you're in the reserves, the guard. If you can file that thing, do it right now because these changes suck. These are, there's no good way to sugarcoat it. If you were to get 50% now, but you wait until after the changes take effect, that's going to be 0. And it's not just, there's a one-liner that talks about comorbidity.
Comorbidity. I can't even say it.
Comorbid symptoms that don't allow you to wear your CPAP. Okay.
Right.
That you can maintain 50% for that, but there's a note in there that says the medical professional must deem it so. You just can't say my PTSD doesn't let me wear it. It has to come from a medical doctor, which is a whole other world. Self-reports way down here, literally everything else way up here. Okay. And so that's the urgency. That if you take one thing from this live stream right now, if you have sleep apnea, file the claim because 50% is, that's healthcare. That's VA healthcare. No copays, no anything. That alone, we've talked about this, Jason. I believe that is the number 1 benefit of VA compensation, period, is at that 50% mark. But sleep apnea alone gets you there. And after the changes, that's not going to be the case.
Right. Now, and here's the thing too, right? That a 50% rating coupled with a couple other things could make you eligible for TDIU, for example, right? So you'll meet one of the qualifiers because you got the 40% with the 70 overall, blah, blah, blah. But it opens up the window for total disability, individual unemployability, if that is your highest rating, right? If you have some other ones coupled in there. So 50% is no joke. Now, what we're talking about here, in case anybody missed it, is currently October 2024, right now, if you have sleep apnea that becomes service connected, either as a direct or as a secondary connection, and you have sleep apnea that the VA has decided, yes, you're service connected or secondary for it, and you are prescribed a CPAP, you are rated 50%. Easy. However, the proposed changes say, essentially, if you have sleep apnea and we see that you are prescribed a CPAP, but your treatment seems adequate and okay, you seem to be doing fine with that treatment, then you get a 0%. So what makes me so mad about it is that is a huge swing. from a 50 to a 0 is just gigantic. It would be more tolerable if they said, hey, look, based on whatever, and whatever rationale they give, and instead of 50, we're going to drop it to 30, right? At least that would be a little more, I guess, understandable in a way. But it's just such a big swing, Clay, that it really bothers me. What I would do today, right, is if I wake up tired, if I'm told that I snore, if I have some sort of signs or symptoms that something else may be going on with my sleep, I would go get a sleep study.
Yeah.
Get a sleep study and see if you have sleep apnea. Again, Clay, treat it like it's $1 million deal, because it is, right? So put forth a little bit of effort. That sleep apnea could be secondary to some other service-connected condition you have. It could be in a way that where you can tie it all together and get that filed. If you have evidence in service and you're currently serving, right, there's plenty of service members that get diagnosed for sleep apnea before they're getting out. If you get that type of a situation and you have between 3 to 6 months before your discharge, not before your terminal leave, your actual discharge dates, 3 to 6 months, you can file a BDD claim. So Bravo Delta Delta, benefits delivery at discharge claim. This is a moment where you'd want to take advantage of that and get that process going beforehand to make sure that you are in before the change. This is such an important one. You want to do anything you can do to preserve the effective date. Now, if for some reason I don't know, I don't really know how to express it exactly right, but you'll get what I'm saying. If you file an intent to file today, and for some reason you do not have all of your evidence together by the time they do the schedule of ratings change, file a claim for your sleep apnea with whatever you got, right? Do not let the intent to file expire. Okay, you want to preserve the effective date because that date is the date of the rating schedule that was in place then. So file your claim with what you got. If they deny you, it buys you more time in which you could then file a supplemental claim with all the other evidence that you need. Maybe you needed some sort of in-service evidence, for example, and the National Archives is taking forever and, whatever's happening, right? And so now finally you get that. Now you can file your supplemental claim with that and still preserve that earlier effective date so you can kind of stretch it out a bit. Anything you want to add, Clay?
Yeah, there's 2 more things on sleep apnea. So we don't know when the changes are going to take effect. The Fed Reg put a little date on there of April 2025. And so that's why we're referencing the April 2025 date, food for thought. What we do know is that mental health has its own regulation, and the auditory and respiratory have been roped together. And so we do know that the tinnitus changes and the sleep apnea changes are going to happen at the same time. Okay,
right.
That's wrapped up in the same policy. Mental health is wrapped up in its own. Could they be together on the same dates? Yes. I think that would be way too much of a caseload for it. Basically be like PACT Act 2.0, right? You have like millions of claims just flood the system. And so if I were in charge, I would space those out about a year is what I would do. Knowing the VA, that's probably not going to be the case.
Right, which means that they're probably just going to, let's just do them at the same time and get it done with, and we'll drink out of a fire hose, and then we'll blame everything else. Yeah, that's pretty much what's going to happen. Yeah,
absolutely. So
zero
food for thought, that's going to happen. And so you had mentioned BDDs, and I want to talk about the dude who wants to do 20 years, dude, American Eagle to that guy or gal. If you are in service right now, active duty, not reserve, not guard, you're active duty, Title 10, and you're looking at these sleep apnea changes and you're wondering about the changes, listen, there's nothing you can do. Okay, that's the God's honest truth. There's no reason to stress about it. It's completely outside of your control. If the changes take effect on April 1st of 25 and your BDD 180-day window is on April 2nd, 2025, you're on the new schedule rating. You can't do anything about it, okay? Unless you get like administrative separated, which I'm not recommending. There's nothing you can do about that. So don't worry about it. I have an odd number of questions from, it seems like they're active duty. And so there's just no way to cut that cookie at all. Okay. We do have a super chat, Jason, from Roosevelt Taylor. Says, also won my HLR in September 24 from an earlier claim filed in August of 23. Okay, congrats to you. Moving from overall 60 to 80 rating, why get back pay and when? Yes. Yeah, it's about, I want to say about 10 days-ish is the back pay. I've seen it take a month, but it's about 10 days is on average, unless you have another more things that you see on back pay stuff.
Right. So, you know, this is a great question because it should show up. Does the VA always get it right? No. Right. Sometimes they fat finger the number, whatever it is, and they put the wrong effective date for the change. It happens all the time. That's why the attorneys and stuff are always looking for back pay mistakes by the VA. So I would say that a couple things. One, Clay and I both highly recommend working with an accredited representative, somebody who can get into the VA system for you. That's not really a VA employee, right? They're an accredited rep. So an affiliate, if you will. They can get into the system and they can look and see what's happening with them. If you do not see the money hit your account, right, within, like Clay said, I would say 10 days from the notification of your award, which may have already passed, I would call the VA. Just call them. I mean, they're not going to tell you to buzz off. They're nice people, you know. And am I speaking with the veteran? Hey, first I want to thank you for your service. And then they'll, you know, you ask them a question, they'll look into it. So try that route. That would be the fastest, lowest barrier for you to just kind of reach out, have the conversation. If for some reason they screwed up, you may need to file a higher level review and have that check the box. There's a box in there that you must check. And that is for to speak with what
informal
is it?
Conference, yeah.
Yes, informal conference.
Yeah.
Yes, informal conference. Little box. Check the box, and then you'll get the phone call, and then you can have that conversation and just say, "Hey, look, I think my back pay got messed up. I didn't receive anything." They'll look into the file, and then they'll go, "Oh, yeah, sure enough, it did." Now, the only reason not the only reason, a common reason why back pay isn't where we think it should be is maybe a diagnosis was different than your intent to file date. So if you were never diagnosed for something, you never had it, right? So if you put in an intent to file here and then 4 months later you got diagnosed for something, they may only back pay you to that diagnosis date. But they screw that up too and actually go in your favor and go all the way back. So they messed that up too, but in your favor. So anyway, back to you, Clay.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I think the argument's called facts found. When new facts are presented, that would change it. The VA can use the facts found argument to say, well, we couldn't have made that decision prior. So you got what you got, right? Which does suck, but whatever. So thank you very much for becoming a member, either on Veterans Info Tap or CivDiv. We definitely appreciate that. And then Freddie, I think this is our last super chat question here. It says sleep study done since 2020. Okay. I'm going to assume, okay, you're diagnosed with sleep apnea. You use the CPAP. It's obstructive. Last denial, 9/25/24. Should I appeal secondary to my allergic rhinitis? I definitely have some thoughts on this one, Jason. Anytime I see a secondary question that's worded this way, it's not just, oh, my sleep apnea is connected to PTSD. Oh, that's denied. My sleep apnea is connected to rhinitis. It doesn't work like that. Okay. First of all, it's a supplemental, which means you need new and relevant evidence. That does not change. If you did a supplemental and said secondary to rhinitis, that's not new or relevant evidence. Which leads me to my secondary thing that I really like talking about. Is the question is, does your rhinitis, and we just talked about this last week, Jason, does your rhinitis aggravate, correlate, or cause your sleep apnea? Not if Jason's does, not if mine does, not if your friend's does your rhinitis, okay? If you have, I think it's polyps at 30%, whatever the criteria is, the more severe rhinitis, it's more likely that rhinitis is going to develop something because it's a more severe condition. If you have a 0% rhinitis, it's less likely. Okay. Food for thought. And so to get new and relevant evidence, go talk to your healthcare, your healthcare team. That's a question for them. It's definitely not a question for two YouTubers. I'm glad you asked it, but the best answer we can give is go talk to your healthcare team, because your rhinitis symptoms are yours and yours alone, and we can't really compare it to anything. Jason, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and here's the thing, and this is so horrible, but it's true. There's two different kind of courses of action, right? If you are seeing a VA provider, it's a different course of action than if you're seeing a private, doctor out somewhere regarding this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. You're going to end up filing a supplemental claim. But the thing is that you can't just, and I'm rewording what Clay said. You can't just say my sleep apnea is because of my rhinitis, right? You can't just say it. It doesn't mean anything. Your words don't mean anything for that. Now, you could feel as though that it does, and that's fine. But you need to go to a doctor, and you need that doctor to say, your service-connected rhinitis is absolutely causing your sleep apnea. Great, doc. I know it now. You know it. Can you do me a favor and put that into my medical records, right? I understand you're just telling me, and that's great, but I need it in writing, right? In fact, I'm actually working with the VA so I can get, some reimbursement for my medical expenses and so forth. Would you mind putting that in a little letter for me? I'd really, really appreciate it, right? Great. I just need to show them that this caused this, right? Have them do that for you. Now that's solid evidence that's saying this is causing that, right? Prove to me that it's not. A doctor just said it is. So that would help you. And then when you go to your C&P exam, yes, I've been seeing my doctor. My doctor has, explained to me in detail how my rhinitis is causing my sleep apnea, and it has nothing to do with anything else, right? I got a letter. I submitted it to the VA. I hope that they sent it to you so you could read it as well. I've sent all the evidence to the VA, whatever you say in your exam, but you can come from a point of, we'll call it power, with knowledge, right? That that you've supplied the information needed. And again, it goes back to this Supreme Court case, right? That's all about the benefit of the doubt, right? So our level of providing proof and evidence is not like you're going to a criminal court, right? It feels like it, but it's not. You don't need to have this big, all this evidence without a doubt. All we need to do is really kind of create some doubt. We need to get it just enough to where the evidence is at least close to equal. Then the VA is supposed to rule in our favor. And that's that Supreme Court case that's going on, which I believe, just with the fact that the Supreme Court is hearing it and moving along, and they'll come out with a decision in the summertime, that because people aren't dumb. So all the judges at the U.S. Court of Veterans Appeals and the Board of Veterans Appeals, those two courts, all those judges are like, well, I don't really want the Supreme Court breathing down my neck, so I'm going to really kind of take this into account a little bit, So I think that we're going to see some better outcomes on those close to call cases. So with that, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, that was our last one until we have a new last one. So as of right now, this is our last one. So the question, thank you very much, Picton, I think that says Pitcon. Okay, Pecan. Appreciate that. I love reading names. So I have sleep apnea, use a CPAP. CPAP and supplies are received through the VA, and my study was community care a few years ago. All right, diagnosed, have the treatment. My doctor has told me it's a secondary to TBI. Should I risk it? Then when I'm 90% PNT with IU since 2016. Okay, so your IU, now this is a tricky one, okay? And there's no one answer, but we'll give you your options. Your IU, PNT, because you're past your 5-year mark of IU, obviously, you have a CPAP, you have sleep apnea, your doctor says it's secondary, I would want to know the basis of what they're actually saying. But I think what Jason just explained, if you can get them to write a Nexus letter specifically, okay, with that, I think there's two things here. If you can check both of these boxes, then I would recommend you submit the sleep apnea claim because you are IUPNT. Don't get that twisted, okay? But I assume you want to work or you want to telework or whatever it looks like, whatever you can do. And so that's why you're asking this question. If you can check these boxes, one, whoever your primary is that said that, they can write a Nexus letter. And two, if you're at what I call a good 90. If you're at a bad 90, it doesn't matter because an 85%, which is rounded to 90 with the 50% sleep apnea rating is, guess what? Still not 90%, right? So that means diddly squat. You have to look at your bilateral factor, an 89% with 50% with a bilateral factor of like 3.4, I think will get you there. So do the VA math. Go on the DAV's calculator, Hill and Ponce calculator, where it looks like for you. And if 50% would push your 90 to 100 and you get that Nexus letter from your primary care, I think it's safe to say to go for it. Personally, that's what I see based on this comment alone. Jason, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, great, solid advice. The one thing that I would add, Clay, is work with an accredited rep. Anything that gets a little bit, hairy, you want to get an accredited rep involved. And the real reason is because they can, again, look into the VA system. They can look at your overall situation. They can ascertain whether your conditions are static, not static, all those things. The fact that you're permanent and total is great. So that already implies that those are all static. But this is, in my answer, I'm also folding in for other people's sake as well, because again, this world is so nuanced. Absolutely run the calculator. Anybody who's looking for some sort of an increase, always run the calculator based on your percentages to figure out where you're at, because it's very important to understand if I'm filing this one claim, is that going to help me get to the next level or not? Should I hold off? Is the risk worth the reward, right? Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's like, oh, well, it really doesn't matter, right? But you need to know you need to know your situation, and you need to get the documentation that's going to support your claim from a medical provider. And when Clay said Nexus, when we say Nexus, it could mean different things, okay? It could mean a Nexus. When you hear the word Nexus, interchange it with a link between. Okay, that's what Nexus is. So a lot of times you're mostly going to hear Nexus referring to proving that your condition manifested or as a result of your time in service. Okay, that's most of the time that's what Nexus means. Not in this case, because it's secondary. So Nexus in this case is the link between the current condition and the new condition that you would do as a secondary, right? So that's the link. And if you can get a doctor to write a good secondary Nexus letter proving that your condition has now caused this other one with good rationale, and you're looking at the calculator and it all makes sense for you to move forward, absolutely, all day long. The fact that your conditions are most likely all static, you're in a good spot.
Yeah, so that's about it, Jason. I'm ready to wrap it up. If you're ready, I do want to say one last thing, though. The whole key takeaway, if you're on this live right now, the thing you need to walk away from is submit the intent to file. Bare minimum, submit an intent to file. Worst case scenario, it expires. So what? Okay. Submit the intent to file because it allows you to be on both rating schedules, which could be, the old one could be better for you. It could be worse for you. It honestly doesn't, it's irrelevant because you're rated on both. That's the best position to be in. What you don't want to be in is, oh, if I would have submitted my intent to file, last month, I would have been okay. That we're trying to avoid that. Just submit the intent to file. Figure you out. Hey, do I submit an increase or do I let it ride out? I can't answer that for you. Jason can't answer that for you. We're going to give you the best information we possibly can so you can answer that. If you have questions on that, Jason and I have tons of videos on GERD and IBS. You can see how that folded out. Look at tinnitus and insomnia. You can see how that played out. And it's going to be very similar for tinnitus, mental health, and sleep apnea. So that's really to wrap up the stream. That's what I want to leave the stream with. Jason, go ahead and take it away.
Well, I'm glad that you read my notes.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. So, hey, look, here's the bottom line. We appreciate every single one of you. We're doing our best to get the information out. It really is about all of us, right? And Clay and I work well together because we have that same mindset. Look, we're the talking heads up here, but really it is a community. It is what I call the veteran sphere, right? Which includes all the veterans, spouses, surviving spouses, dependents. It's all of us, and all of us working together to make sure that we get the information out there to others, right? We're linking up and holding hands and making it happen. And it's really because of you. We can't do it ourselves. So thank you so much for all of your support. If you're not subscribed to all 3 channels, subscribe. It's free. It doesn't cost a nickel. It's easy to do. And it's a way to support us doing this stuff for all of us. So we really appreciate you guys. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.